Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment with South Florida trade trends. Thank you for being here. We have a very nice turnout expected today in the range of 100 or so people. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to South Florida Trade Trends, insights from South Florida's top 3 port directors. My name is Ken Roberts. I'll let you read my bio there, which you can see, but I'm a guy who loves numbers, and I like import-export trade, and I like economic information, so this is just a perfect job for a guy like me. But as you can see, I contribute a column to Forbes.com 5 times a month on import-export trade. I'm a foreman with the Federal Reserve Trade and Transportation Advisory Board. We do, in addition to this Trade Trends webinar, we do them around the country. We also do Trade Talk newsletters. We do Trade Matters videos on our YouTube channel. And our website, ustradenumbers.com, we upload something like 10 million data points every month for every airport, seaport, and border crossing, more than 200 countries, and some 1,800 different exports and imports. We could not have done this event without the sponsorship of MIA, Miami International Airport. They're our corporate sponsor, and we're grateful for that support. In addition, some of you may have found out about this event from our supporting sponsors, the World Trade Center Miami, Port Everglades Association, and the Florida Custom Broker and Forwarders Association. Today, we've got 3 terrific speakers. As you know, Lester Sola is the director and CEO of Miami-Dade Aviation Department, which runs Miami National Airport. Juan Kuryla is the port director and CFO at PortMiami, and Jonathan Daniels is the CEO and port director at Port Everglades. If at any point today you have questions, you can just put them in the little question queue there at the bottom of your screen. You can chat in the chat, whatever that's called, chat thing, anytime you want. But again, questions in the questions make it a little bit easier. So we're going to start with a brief overview of trade looking back at 2020. Before we do that, we're going to have some fun with some polling. And so I'm going to give you 3 quick questions, one for each of our ports here. Okay, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to answer this. So again, it's going to be brief. So we got to jump right in. This is, whoops, that's the wrong question first. That's all right. Port Miami. This country is now Port Miami's #4 ranked trade partner based on a 6,000% increase in imports led by a pharmaceutical component. Is it Ireland, Iceland, or Israel? And by the way, the right answer starts with the letter I. I'll give you another 5 to 10 seconds to answer that question. Okay. And I'm going to share those results with you. Not many of you got your answer in before the buzzer, but it's sort of evenly split between Ireland and Iceland, with Ireland slightly ahead and a few votes for Iceland. I'm going to give you the results. I'm going to give you the results during the presentation. It'll come up naturally in the conversation. So let me go now to the, oh, did I share those results? I guess I did, yeah. Let me go to another question here. This one's going to be for MIA. And this question is, this MIA import is up more than 100% this year. Is it cell phones, gold, or medicines? Get those answers in quickly, because you can know I'm going to cut you off fast. You're doing much better this time in getting those answers in. About 10 more seconds for that answer. So think it over and give it your best shot. Okay, I'm going to share those results. And what you can see there is the biggest percentage said medicine at 61%. We have 26% at gold and 13% at cell phones. And we got one last question here, and this one will be for Port Everglades. And that question is going to be, Port Everglades' most valuable import is passenger vehicles, T-shirts, or gasoline and other refined petroleum products. Gasoline, T-shirts, or passenger vehicles. And again, I'll share your poll results here in just a moment, but I'll give you the correct answer during the presentation when I go through some of the data. And welcome to anybody who's a latecomer. We just started, you haven't missed much, just a couple of poll questions. And so we'll end that poll here and we'll share the results. I should have said this is too late now, but these poll results are anonymous. You don't have to worry about right or wrong answers. And here's the results. 86% said gasoline and other refined petroleum products. That would include jet fuel, propane, and butane. 2% said t-shirts, and 12% said passenger vehicles. All right. So I'm going to now move on to this. So this is now the trade overview, and I'm going to explain this chart before I put it up because it can be a little bit complicated to look at. But the point is, I'm going to look at 2020 was basically a story of 2.5 years, right? The first half was really tough, particularly this month, a year ago, when U.S. trade fell almost 30%, which I had never seen before. The economy just got shut down because of the pandemic. So March was not good. April was worse, and May was really bad. June was pretty bad, but by July, things started picking up again. So the first half and the second half were two very different years, and this chart is going to tell that story. I'm going to look at 2020 results comparing what happened in this first half to the second half, and then looking at 2019 in the second half compared to 2020 in the second half. So bear with me on this one. We'll walk you through it. So this is, again, second half results. That first column of numbers, that shows you that in the second half, U.S. trade was up 13.41% over the first half, okay? And if you roll down there, you can see MIA did about as well. PortMiami did better than that, and Port Everglades not quite as well. Now, if you compare the second half of 2020 to the second half of 2019, you can see the South Florida ports did not quite as well as the U.S. average there. But what you can also see in that last column is that they're ranked among all airports, seaports, and border crossings in the country, all improved. So what does that tell you? If they didn't perform as well as the national average, but their rank improved, it tells you that everybody was taking a beating last year in that second half compared to the second half of 2019. Let's add exports on there, and it tells a somewhat similar story, but we can see is on the export side, the second half had a recovery from the first half with growth at all four. The U.S. average was up 8%. The three South Florida ports up a little bit less than that, but if you look at the second half, not such good news there. You can see that the U.S. average fell 9.37% compared to the first half of 2019, and the South Florida ports actually performed even more poorly than that. Now, if we add imports on there, and if I move my shoulder, what you'll see is big numbers for South Florida ports compared to the national average when compared to the first half of 2020, including PortMiami, they're almost 28.59%, MIA almost 22%, and Port Everglades 15%. The second half, not quite as good for the seaports, but MIA did pretty well, up 7.44%, when U.S. imports only increased 0.24% in that time period. Okay. So let's move on to and by the way, Tatiana is going to monitor questions, I hope, and let me know if we have any here. Tatiana is our director of events and does a fantastic job of trying to keep me doing a good job here. So we're going to start with MIA, and what I'm going to do for the three ports now is I'm going to look at 2020 results with just a sliver of some information, and then the first quarter of 2021. What I should remind everybody here is that when you think of these three ports, particularly on the airport side, the airport gets a sliver of its revenue from cargo. Now that sliver, let's say it's 8 to 12%, somewhere in that range. That sliver became much more important last year with passenger traffic, particularly in the first half again, or the second quarter of the first half, so affected. And on the seaports, they've got big cargo revenue, but they've also got very big cruise revenue, and that revenue was severely impacted, as we know, because the cruise lines were essentially shut down for a good part of the year. So even though they aren't necessarily the critical piece of the revenue drivers for these three ports, they became increasingly important in 2020. So this is now MIA that I'm going to show you. And what I want to tell you about MIA is this, that the reason I'm showing you the countries here is because MIA's trade, which last year was $53.4 billion, trade fell about $5.4 billion from 253.4 billion, and really it was just three countries that were real drivers of that decline, unfortunately, and that is Brazil, which you can see in the top left corner there, and if you go over to the fourth column midway down, you see Germany, and if you go to the fifth column at the top, you see Italy. Those three countries accounted for more than $3 billion of that $5 billion loss. The story in Brazil, as many of you know, is going to be aviation related. It's aircraft and parts, mainly exports going to Brazil. The story in Germany is going to be jet engines coming to MIA, and those fell about 80% last year. And the third one is Italy. Italy is mainly exports of medicine or immunological products. That had been booming for the 3 years prior, and it just took a bit of a breather last year. And that ties in with MIA's role in pharma, as a pharma hub. It's an initiative of the airports. So we're gonna bump up now to 2021, and you can see the little blue arrow sort of right off my shoulder there, that it shows you what date range we're looking at. And this is from our website, by the way. This is what US Trade Numbers looks like. And this page, MIA's page, is open on our website because it's sponsored by the airport. So you can see a lot of this information. This is year to date. You can also pick the month. You can pick the annual. I started on 2020 there. You can switch between value and tonnage. We're looking today at value, and this particular one is looking at year to date. And the good news here is that Colombia's trade is up better than 15%, with imports up more than 50%. And there is going to be the answer to your first question, because gold imports from Colombia more than doubled first quarter of this year compared to last year. And we'll take a quick look at how you guys answered that question. So some of you got it right, about a quarter of you got it right. And a lot of you thought it would be medicines, which would make sense for a lot of reasons, the pharma hub and the COVID, so forth like that. But in fact, it's gold. There's a great story in gold, and it'll be covered in my next Trade Talk newsletter that will go out next week for South Florida. If you don't receive that, let us know. We can add you to the list. But it's a good story because MIA plays an enormous role in global gold trade. China also saw significant growth in its trade with MIA, and that's going to be largely imports, and it's largely high tech, no surprises there. And the third country is that country that you see in the dark green at the bottom of the second column. That's Argentina. And interesting enough, Argentina's most of the trade between MIA and Argentina is going to be exports to Argentina. They both grew about 40%, but exports are a much bigger number because there's so much more. And it's broad-based. It was cell phones, it was computers, it was medicine, it was aircraft parts, it was just a lot of stuff. So a very broad-based increase there for Argentina. We're going to jump over now to Port Everglades, or I think we are. There we go. So Port Everglades is an interesting story in and of itself, because most seaports around the country have large deficits, just the nature of the trade. Port Everglades trade historically, or in the particularly last 5 to 10 years, has been relatively balanced, occasionally running a surplus even. So that makes it stand out a little bit. For Port Everglades, the slide I'm going to put up from our website is actually an import slide. This is 2020 trade. And the reason I'm putting that up is, A, to give you an answer to the second question. The question was, what is the #1 most valuable import into Port Everglades? If I said export a minute ago, I meant import. What is the #1 most valuable import into Port Everglades? And you can see the answer there is t-shirts, followed by, in 2020, motorboats and yachts. As many of you know, PortMiami and Port Everglades are sort of the boat capital of this country, and a lot of boat and yacht sales go on here. #2 ranked among, and then #3 was that gasoline category. Most of you thought it was gasoline. If I'd asked you this question a few years ago, you would have been correct, because it had historically been #1. But imports in gasoline were off about $667 million last year, of a total loss for all imports, 1.37. So a big percentage of that was just that one category. And what's going on there? Well, all the jet fuel that goes into MIA and Port Everglades and West Palm Beach airports, all Fort Lauderdale Airport, all that goes from Port Everglades, but via pipeline to MIA and to Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International, and then also to Palm Beach. All that fuel goes from Port Everglades. Well, if planes aren't flying, there's not a lot of need for jet fuel, right? Similarly, if we're not driving, there's not a lot of need for as much gasoline. The bigger trend, though, is that the United States is becoming a large producer of oil, of gasoline, and natural gas. And so the longer term trend is that we need less gasoline in this country than we did previously. If you go back 6 years, the total decline in the value of gasoline coming into Port Everglades is almost $3 billion, okay? And again, as I mentioned earlier, it had been #1. So for those of you who answered #1, It was not a bad answer. It's just it has changed over time. Let me jump now forward to the 2021 data. And what I'm going to talk about there is that gasoline, as you can see now, whoops, it's sticking for some reason. I apologize for that. So gasoline has moved up to number 2, and you think, well, that's great. But gasoline is still up about 37% this year from the first quarter of last year. So it hasn't recovered quite yet. I presume the next quarter for a lot of these numbers for all 3 ports and even ports all over the country are going to look really good because they're going to be compared against some of the nastiest months of the pandemic. So I think April, May, June data will look really, really good. But the good news for this year is that trade with the top 3 trade partners, that's Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Brazil, is up and up strongly. So with Dominican Republic, it's up better than 5%. With Honduras, it's up 20%, and then about 13% for Brazil. So really good. On the Dominican Republic, it's mainly on the export side, and that's where most of that trade is, as you might imagine. For the other 2, for Honduras and Brazil, it's largely on the import side. So I'm going to jump forward now to PortMiami. And I'm going to also, as I did with MIA, use a country slide to tell this story. The biggest hits to trade with PortMiami last year were those top 2 trade partners, Dominican Republic and China. And I should mention there's a little bit of, with the trade, there's a little bit of distortion in this trade data because this includes some trade that goes on the Miami River. And that will pick up some of that Dominican Republic trade there as well. But those are the 2 top trade partners. And about 25% of the $4 billion loss in the value of PortMiami's trade last year was with those 2 countries. So they're really important. As you can see from the numbers, they account for about 25% of the trade as well. So about 25% of the loss. The DR's trade, interestingly enough, was relatively balanced between imports and exports. And as you can imagine on China, it was all on the import side, because that's largely how the United States trades with China. To give you an idea, roughly 90 cents of every dollar of trade that we conduct with China is an import, and that's not just here in South Florida, but it's nationwide. We tend to send them historically. We tended to send them things like scrap metal, scrap paper, et cetera, et cetera. So let's jump forward to 2021 for PortMiami and see what the news is there. Well, the news there is China, and Ireland. Okay, so trade with China is up almost 40%, and that's almost all imports. It's going to be seats, it's going to be motor vehicle parts, it's going to be cell phones, it's going to be things like speakers, headsets, and microphones. Some of us using these for webinars like these. Exports actually declined slightly, so it's a big import story. Ireland's trade is up more than 4,000%, with imports up almost 6,000%. Again, this is a 3-month period, so it's not a big sample, and that's all nucleic acids and heterocyclic compounds, okay? And those are used in the pharma industry. DNA and RNA, for example, are nucleic acids. And this is now at the moment, PortMiami's most valuable import. And as you can see, the results from the slide is 50% of you got that answer right and said it was Ireland. A number of you thought it was Israel, which also has a very strong pharma industry, so I was a little mean in that question. And a couple of you thought Iceland as well. So those are the answers to those 3 questions. So before I move on to the panel discussion, I'll sort of sum it all up. First half of last year, nasty, particularly the second quarter, particularly right now a year ago. Second half, pretty good. Not bad for particularly on the import side in South Florida. And then this year, things are really starting to come around. And my expectation, the months of April, May, and June are going really, really good when compared to last year, because that's when you saw the most damage done due to the pandemic. So we're going to now move on to our panel discussion. And I'm going to start with Lester Sola at MIA. I'm going to switch my screen we're going to ask Lester to come on. And good morning, Lester. Thanks for being here. Thanks so much for giving us your time.
Good morning. My pleasure. Certainly worth the few minutes to spend and talk about how important trade is to this community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And Lester, as you know, is the CEO of the airport. But before that, he was He's got 26 years with the county, but before that, he was the director of the Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department, and that's the largest utility in the southeastern United States. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions. And again, I would encourage anybody who has questions to feel free to jump in either for me or for Lester here. And we hope to leave a little bit of time at the end as well. But the first question, we talked a little bit about, we all know about the lack of passenger flights that is starting to unwind finally and thankfully, but it was really tough during stretches of the year. And so my question is, how did the airport respond? How did airlines like American Airlines respond to that? And what kind of steps did they take? And I think even deal with cargo as well.
No secret that 2020, we lost a significant an overwhelming number of passenger flights and passenger volumes, right? But with regards to cargo, it's really remarkable how the industry continues to adapt. So we had a very good year for cargo, right? So we've been growing, we've been setting records year over year. Last year we were just shy of establishing another record, but still a phenomenal year considering the drop in passenger flights. So how does the airport adapt? How do the airlines adapt? It's really remarkable how the majority of cargo is it's coming in cargo freighters, but then it's getting to its final distribution location in the bellies of planes. A lot of people don't understand that it's not just people and luggage, but cargo, valuable, and that makes a big difference whether the route is going to make sense for an airline or not. And there were airlines that were flying empty planes of passengers full of cargo in the belly. And in fact, American Airlines was flying to London, a 777 with no passengers, full of cargo. So is that the best way to do it? No, but we all know the importance of cargo, and the commerce has to take place, and the only way that's really going to take place is to continue to move that merchandise from one location to another.
Right. And so talk about then, what does your crystal ball show for the future? Where do you think you are now, and where do you think we're going to be in the next 12, 24 months, something like that?
We are going to have a very, very good 2021, and we're going to have a phenomenal 2022. And I say that because of the following, right? Domestic travel is, we have surpassed numbers we have pandemic with domestic travel. In fact, people want to come to Miami. So a lot of domestic travel is coming into Miami, and we have basically. So we have new airlines, right? Thanks to our team led by Chris. We have obviously Southwest, JetBlue, Frontier continues to expand. So we have a significant number of new entry carriers that are continuing to increase service. So what's going to happen once the vaccine rollout in South America and in the Caribbean gets a hold and start to perform at the level that we are, the international travel, which is still lagging significantly behind, will come back. And we're going to have a situation between 2021 and 2022 that we suspect the number of passengers coming into MIA will significantly surpass whatever numbers we've had in the past. And we see it today. I mean, we're actually looking at how do we fit all these airlines into this airport once everything reestablishes, whether it be people traveling for vaccines here, which we have a lot of South Americans, Central Americans coming here that have the means to do so. Ultimately, we see the U.S. donating vaccines. So 2021, 2022, we think we're going to have a super strong recovery.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the that international piece and that business piece does depend on success in getting the vaccine under control in some of these countries. But I think domestic people are dying to get on a plane and go somewhere, right? Yeah.
If you come to the airport during the times that American is banking their flights, Southwest, JetBlue, it's full of people. Right. But it's obviously 75, 80% domestic passengers.
Right.
International, we're not there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, and then the cargo, I think, that'll help on the cargo side as too. I mean, one thing that makes MIA a little bit fortunate is that MIA has a relatively high proportion of what they call freighter cargo, which is all cargo airlines, as opposed to belly and the passenger. But just having those passenger planes back in service will give the cargo community a much bigger opportunity, and will help with the pricing, because the pricing has, I think, did go up significantly last year because there was just no availability.
Yeah, I agree. So in the absence of the belly planes being available because of the passenger traffic was diminished, we had some additional operations with regards to cargo, but that will reach its balance, right? So we constantly are out there marketing, choosing MIA for flights and airlines, not just on passenger volumes, but on the yield that these airlines can make on the bellies of the planes in selling for cargo. So yeah, cargo, thanks, and you mentioned it earlier on, thanks to cargo, we were able to survive the year, right? So it's an important component, and we continue to try and support that operation and hopefully future expansions in that area.
Yeah. Well, Lester, thank you very much for your time. I don't see any questions for Lester. If you do have questions, we can get back to Lester hopefully at the end if we have time.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do now is jump ahead to our next panelist, and that's going to be Jonathan Daniels from Port Everglades. So we're going to ask Jonathan to join us here. And there's Jonathan.
All right, good morning.
Yeah, so good to see you, Jonathan. Thanks again for your time. We appreciate you being here.
Good to be here, and appreciate the opportunity to be on with, in addition to yourself, Ken, with Juan and with Lester this morning.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and these are three just enormous engines for the South Florida economy, obviously. And there's one key distinction between, other than geographic, between you and Juan and Lester, in that you started. They've both been in the county for 2 decades. Last year was your first year, and what a first year it was. What takeaways do you have from that first year? What made it most interesting, most challenging, most whatever? What was it like?
Well, I mean, the first part of it is whether you've been here 10 years or 10 months as I've been here. It's an opportunity, whether they're pandemic or not. Hey, blame the new guy. You take a look at the trade data, and whether you're there a short period of time or a long period of time, you kind of take it very personally. Yeah. Coming in here, certainly we were on the downslide already. Unlike a lot of other ports, though, I think what we didn't see that wild swing right at the beginning, and essentially we're not seeing that immediate full-fledged fire and burn to come back. Just because our primary trade routes happen to be north and south into Latin America. As it slowly went down, certainly we felt that as it's coming back slowly, we're feeling that slow burn to get back up to those pre-pandemic levels. So there is strength in that, but at the same time, we don't have the opportunity to take advantage of the wild swings that occur within the Asian market. Certainly, you see, as you were talking about what was going on with Juan down in Miami. They're subject to a little bit of the swings of Southeast Asia, and taking a look at what occurs there ultimately impacts them. We did not have to do that. But it doesn't mean that we haven't taken a hard look at it. What has been good with this is we've pulled in some additional, some new small services, again, staying within our strength, and that's north and south. And it does appear that we are going to, by the end of 2021, be back in a position where we'll be back at about a little bit more than 1 million TEUs. So we're going to see, I think, growth by the end of the year, somewhere between 50 and 75,000 TEUs additional. Part of that will be some new sailings and some new service offerings that we're having, an expansion in AL5 service, which has come in. But at the same time, we're looking at some strength and growth organically with what's going on internally with some of our existing tenants. It's been nice to be able to work with them during this period of time and understand what their needs are. And before going on outside and going hard at looking at some outside opportunities, first and foremost, what we want to do is just make sure that our tenants here, the terminal operators, the shipping lines are here and are utilizing the full capacity. And that's been successful to the point where we are about at pre-pandemic levels on our TEU count, and they're going to be able to grow beyond that. So it's been 10 months. It's been an interesting 10 months to say the least. Yeah. But at the same time, certainly between the assets that we have down here in Broward County and what's in Miami-Dade, there are a few places really in the world that are going to be able to recover as quickly as this region of the United States.
Great. And so I should mention that Jonathan, many of you know this, but Jonathan, before coming here, was at Gulfport, Mississippi, and before that, Oswego, New York, where he led port authorities there. So he's a veteran of the industry, obviously. But so let's look at what kind of infrastructure you have going on for where from here. What's in the pipeline?
A lot of what's going on is preparing for that next level, that next jump in capacity and such. And in order to be able to do that, In the next 2 years, we're going to be completing $471 million Southport turning notch. We recently brought on 3 new super post Panamax cranes, allows us to go from 18 wide to 22 wide. And we're already seeing benefits associated with that. I think down the line, though, in order to be able to match, we are engaged now in the deepening and widening project. We've got about a $40 million Coast Guard reconfiguration that's critical to that. And then in 2023, we should start actually the physical digging, the heavy industrial component of it. But even with that, we are starting to see the benefits of this infrastructure. That the turning notches I'd mentioned, $471 million. We're actually going to be pulling the sheet piles out next year, which gives us the berth capacity. But there will be some backlands development that needs to occur with some of our container yards in order to be able to match the amount of berth capacity that we have with the container yard capacity. We also, in the next 30 to 60 days, probably will pull the trigger on ordering 3 additional cranes.
Wow.
So that will allow us the opportunity. That allows us the opportunity to go from 10 where we are right now up to 13, and we'll have 6 of the Super Post Panamax low profile cranes. So we worked out a great deal with ZPMC, and we should be able to see those under construction probably within the next 2 to 6 months, with a late 2013 or 2023 arrival with that equipment. So it's an infrastructure, it's an equipment to be able to do that, to be able to get to that next level, and also the external transportation infrastructure that we're going to be engaging in the next few years. Flyovers on the 595, we need to be able to match the infrastructure development that's occurring, the capacity increase with the external transportation infrastructure. So it's an exciting time for us to be able to move forward infrastructure wise, but that is immediately translating into new cargo opportunities as well.
Okay, and I'll mention this, but I think most of the people here are pretty aware of what a TEU is and what gantry cranes or so forth are, but the TEU is a 20-foot equivalent units, these boxes you see at ports, and you see them on the back of trucks and trains and so forth. The gantry cranes are largely coming because the ships are getting bigger and you need cranes that can reach out farther across the bow of the ship. So that's what the expenditure on all these cranes is all about, is to handle these bigger ships that are coming both to Port Everglades, PortMiami, and ports, a number of ports around the country and around the world, to sort of handle that. So I tell you what, we're doing pretty well on time here. So I'm going to jump now, Jonathan, to Juan, and I think we'll have time to bring all you guys back to, because we got some questions in the queue, and I'm going to try to hold them till the end here. So I'm going to thank you, Lester. I mean, I did that twice now. I'm going to thank you.
You know what? Listen, I've been called worse. If you're going to call me anything, call me Lester.
There you go. I want to thank Jonathan for his input there, and I'm going to now jump to Juan, and I'll try to get Juan's name right as many times as I can here. Juan, welcome. And I've already seen Juan's background. He's going to win the award today for best background. And we just got to hope those fish don't get out during this discussion. But pretty cool. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So Juan, welcome. You just heard from Lester, and you just heard from Jonathan. And I'd like to start with you with, what was the hardest thing about the cargo picture last year, particularly probably in the first half of the year?
Yeah, thank you, Ken, and great seeing you. Thank you for this opportunity, and just a very warm hello to my friend of many decades, Lester Sola, and likewise for Jonathan. And I have to tell you, Jonathan has been an incredible addition to the Florida ports system. It's great to work with him on many issues. People always look at Miami and Port Everglades and they try to pit one against the other, and that is just absolutely not the case. We work on many fronts. We work together. He's doing an incredible job. He is respected, appreciated by every other port director in Florida. Does a great job with the council, and so we really welcome him to Florida, South Florida, and I wish Jonathan and PV the best, and they're doing a great job. I think they're having a great year. So Jonathan, it's great being with you on this panel, our first panel together outside of the Ports Council, and we hope to do many more. Ken, to your question, when the pandemic hit, almost 14 months ago, there was incredible concern, immediate concern for the cruise industry. I think that was evident from day one. And then we started hearing about the blank sailings from China. We started hearing and seeing blank sailing.
Why don't you define blank sailings for those who don't know what a blank sailing is? Because it did gum up the works for a while there.
Yeah, a blank sailing is when we have all these ships and all these stops that were scheduled canceled, right? And so we had all these cancellations all over the West Coast, and then of course the East Coast, and that started. That announcement started coming down in February before the pandemic officially hit here in the United States, right? Because remember, China closed earlier.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, factories were closed in China. Everything shut down. So we started seeing those effects as early as March, but it wasn't mainstream, right? It became mainstream here mid to late March, maybe early March, but we already started seeing some of that earlier on. And then, of course, right, March came around and we saw decreases in our volumes, and then April came around and we kept on seeing more decreases, and May more decreases, and we all started getting we were already very concerned as well on the cargo side. And then Latin America hit, right? Because there was a 2-3 month lag from the time that Chinese factories shut down to the time that Latin American factories shut down. And then our trade from Latin America went down incredibly. So here we are in June of 2020, down maybe 18, 20, 25% from Latin America, maybe a little bit more. To that, we add another double-digit decline from Asia and Europe. And here we are in July thinking we were going to have a horrible cargo year. But then August came around, right? And August was, hey, we got some recovery going down here from the Far East. Latin America and the Caribbean were still down, but then September, October rolled around and we said, hey, things are coming back.
Yep.
Right? Things are coming back. And then our second half of the year, cargo-wise, turned out to be a very good one. And for us, our numbers are a little bit, although they have a very nice correlation with your numbers, which are based on value. We
Right.
base ours based on TEU throughput. We base and that includes empties, right?
Yep. Yep.
So every time a container goes through the dock, whether it's full or empty, we charge the same amount. So we started having a nice cargo comeback towards the end of the year. October was a record month in the history of the Port of Miami. October of 2020, only to be outdone in January of 2021 with another record month. And now we're seeing some very nice numbers. February was strong. March was our second busiest month in the history of the Port of Miami. April looked very good. We're still waiting to get those numbers. We'll have that by the 23rd of May. So we're seeing a very nice comeback on the cargo side. I can tell you from having conversations with all of our major shipping lines, they're doing very well. The rates, and I know Jonathan knows this, the rates for a container, Trans-Pacific, Transatlantic, North-South, you name it, within the Caribbean, the rates are fantastic. It is no secret that this year has been a very profitable year for the shipping lines.
Yeah, now I'd say you're saying fantastic for the shipping lines. The shippers liked it the way it was, but he's really
for the shipping lines, right? Who are our clients, our terminal operators, clients. So we're always happy to have happy clients, right? And so they're happy. I don't know, they're happy. They're very, very happy in that regard. And but there's always challenges. There's always certain stress points. Now maybe you have to deal with capacity, right? You have to deal with congestion. You have to deal with prioritization of cargo and so on and so forth. But as it relates to cargo, right now we're having a very, very good year. And I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody that's listening, that's involved with the cargo business, with trade and logistics here in South Florida. We could not have stayed operational the way we have if it were not for the cargo business. The cargo business has kept this port going for the last 14 months. True, it's been and it continues to be very, very challenging. But between the growth in cargo and some very favorable debt positions as it relates to variable debt, that the rates have gone down below 1%.
Right.
That has been one of the key drivers in making ends meet here at the Port of Miami. When you consider that we're down $120 million every year now, or about $10 million, 10 to 12 a month
A month.
from no cruise revenues,
Right.
right? So there's been a little bit of a juggling act there, a nice and balancing act, and it could not have been done. I tell you, Ken, it could not have been done without the support that we have received. And I know Lester shares this sentiment, the support that we've gotten from our mayor, Daniela Levine Cava. Our board of county commissioners have been absolutely remarkable, supportive of our industries, and needless to say, our staff, right? Our staff here at the Port of Miami, and Lester, I'm sure will share the same about the airport. Creativity, thinking outside of the box, no pun intended with the containers there, right? But and making the Port of Miami continue to thrive over the last 14 months.
Fantastic. Juan, thank you for that. I'm going to ask Tatiana if she can queue up Jonathan and Lester. And we got 3 questions in the queue, and we'll see if we can get to a few questions here before the buzzer hits us. Here's let's see who's on. Let's see when we get on here. I'm going to ask the first question here is for I guess this will be for Lester. So as Lester mentioned, there's a flow of Latin Americans coming to South Florida to get vaccinated. Not sure that is allowed. If it is not, would they have problems renewing their visas in the future, lessening the flow of passengers in the future? Lester, what do you know about that situation?
Before I answer the question, I just want to say that it's completely unfair that Juan has obviously we all know how famous the camera is, but that clearly he has a loop, because it's the same angel fish that keeps coming over and over again. And so either he's got somebody down there feeding the fish, or Jonathan and I can't even compare to that. So I'm going to go with
it is the single biggest aquarium I've ever seen in my life.
Jonathan, I have one for you. I'll give you one. Okay.
I love it.
So Lester, and by the way, Jonathan, Jonathan, that's a wonderful coffee mug you have there, by the way.
You know what? It's shameless self-promotion.
There you go. So Lester, to the question. Oh, Lester's frozen at the moment. I think you guys are experiencing that too. Let me jump to another question. Here's Lester.
The rules are complicated. So it's a public situation, but if it is a county-run site, you have to be a resident. If it is a state or federal-run site, okay, they're not checking for residency. Okay. So you have to make sure you do the research. You have to make sure that you go to the correct site. But there are individuals who have second homes here. There are individuals who have bank accounts here. So if you can, even for the county site, if you can provide any one of those verification documents, you're good. If you don't, you have to check with the federal and the state-run sites, because you will have access to some of those locations.
Okay, thank you for that, Lester. Here's a question, I guess, for both of our seaport directors. What are the ports doing to invest in systems and technology to track and manage COVID cases prevention, so that we can avoid any negative publicity and ensure safe operation?
I'll go quickly, because ultimately what we do is we follow a combination of CDC protocols as well as Broward County protocols, making sure that we have constant. It starts out with the most basic form of communication. I'm on actually through our studio. We actually broadcast to our port users group on a regular basis. One is working with them to get any type of information back and reporting. We also report port cases as a whole. We talk about any changes in county CDC policy that may impact them with how they do their operation, but ultimately making sure that they maintain a safe workplace as well. So we are not using any contact tracing, other than we do have the protocols when there is a case. Is we do then walk through, even with our tenants, we do walk through the contact tracing, looking back several days associated with that. I am happy to say that while we have had COVID cases on site, both within the administration and some of the other tenants and business partners that we do have, we have not had one that traces back to a community spread within the port itself. It all came from outside, within their family, within the community, outside the gates of Port Everglades. So we're very pleased that we've been able to maintain our culture and our health and safety associated with being able to do our job. At the same time, we have not seen any community spread inside.
Okay. And Juan, before you go, I should tell Lester, I've been watching closely. That's a different fish each time. He's got a bunch of different fish there. That's a big, they're family members. They look alike, but they're not the same fish. Go ahead, Juan.
Yeah. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for having my back here. I would say with friends like Lester, who needs enemies, right? But in that regard, we follow very closely the requirements, right, of the CDC and the Department of Health, and we are in communication with them to see what they would feel or what they recommend, right, to have the Port of Miami go above and beyond, and I'm sure other ports as well, in terms of what technologies to have once the ships start. What we don't want to do is put something in place that then is not something that is viewed as useful or as value added by the agencies, whether it's customs or whether it's CDC or the Department of Health. But rest assured that we are not dismissing anything or any technology. On the contrary, we're always willing to listen and see what else we can do, right, in terms of providing more information, more accurate information, more up-to-date or live information to anyone that is interested on this topic, whether it's statewide, nationwide, worldwide. Now, we would love to have something that automatically is tracking everything that is going on every ship here in our port and on any port for that matter. We do have ships that come to Miami, they go to Port Everglades, or they're in the Caribbean, they come back to either one of our ports, and the more data we have, the better we're going to be.
Yeah, and I should mention that I think all of us are aware of the problem out on the West Coast with all those ships in the Pacific parking lot was in part due to the fact there was so much COVID problems on shore, on land, that they're having trouble with getting enough workers to get those ships in. So here's one last quick question. We'll try to sneak in. We're a little bit over our time, but we'll sneak in with this one, a short answer from each of you. It's my understanding that MIA, Port Miami and Port Everglades all instituted hiring freezes in the wake of COVID pandemic for those interested in careers with these entities. When do the panelists anticipate hiring will begin again? Doesn't matter to me. Go ahead, Lester.
I suspect with the next fiscal year, so starting in October of this year, we'll probably start loosening up some of the hiring freezes.
Jonathan?
We think we should see the same. We lost our vacant positions and they're going through the justification process right now. But in our budget preparation, we're looking at reinstituting and actually going through some hiring. What is the good thing is that if we have a position where actually someone leaves right now, we do get the authorization to fill. So it's not something where we lose that position for a time. So there's constant people moving through, but we certainly look at adding to a robust workforce going into next fiscal year.
And Juan, do you have any more money for your fish budget for next year, or is that sort of frozen?
For which budget? I'm sorry.
The fish budget.
Yes, well, we bought some additional food, right, to bring them along. But yeah, we froze at the very beginning of the pandemic. We froze over 100 full-time vacancies, and we plan on releasing some of those that are cruise operations related. Planning on releasing those probably within 4 to 6 weeks of having a definite restart date, because we'll need those folks to be out there at the cruise terminals and provide great service, and the rest, like similar to Lester, sometime provided that we are fully in operations with our cruises, or fully meaning 60-80%, right, capacity. Because whether a ship comes at 100% capacity or 40% capacity, we still have to open that terminal. We still have to operate those passenger boarding bridges and clean the terminals, et cetera, and staff the parking lots. We are expecting to have a good amount of people coming back, new people coming. We didn't furlough anyone in October, no, the beginning of our fiscal year.
Okay, and here I'm going to squeeze in a couple more as we do quick answers because we are a little bit over time, but and it sort of ties into this a little bit. And I know might have to be a little careful how you answer this one. Is there any requirement for the crews to be vaccinated or contained for 14 plus or minus days before leaving the ship? And that sounds like it's a seaport question, but if anybody wants to answer that, jump in.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that. There's all kind of different protocols being considered right now, and I think right now at this time, at least from my end, it's a little bit premature to give an answer as to what the final requirements are going to be to get the cruise ships going. What I can tell you, Ken, is that this industry is ready. The protocols and the safety measures that all the cruise lines have been working on and are ready to implement right now are going to make people very, very safe. People let people enjoy their cruises, and I got to tell you, we're ready to go.
Okay, and real quickly, both of you, what percentage of your revenues are from cruise? Jonathan first, maybe, and then Juan. It's probably the same, more or less.
Well, no, I mean, we're fortunate. We're a little bit more diverse, but you're looking at about 40% of our overall revenue is purely cruise based.
And Juan?
Yeah, so we are including the ancillary cruise revenues, meaning taxi cabs and Ubers and Lyfts and other kind of stuff. We're about 62-65% of our revenues. Now with cargo coming up a little bit, maybe we'll hit 60-40, but cruise is the majority for sure, the majority of the direct revenues to the Port of Miami.
Okay, and I promise to be the last question here. Do you foresee any slowdown on the cargo imports for the remainder of the year? It seems a lot of hoarding of inventory in the U.S. Any one of the three of you on that one, I would say. Lester, go ahead, John.
I don't.
Just
very
very
going to go down.
Go ahead, Lester.
Go ahead, Lester.
No. Short answer. I think cargo continues to grow year over year.
Jonathan.
I agree. We're going to see it year over year, especially just because of the amount of consumption zone cargo that we import. As we continue to see the economy, continue to see the population grow in South Florida, which is a good thing. There's ultimately the need to be able to increase the imports.
Yeah.
Same here. We've spoken with every line on this issue, and none of our lines see any slowdown on cargo throughput for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, and I should add, it's not probably a big piece of the cargo at the three ports here, but cargo for the cruise lines obviously is a piece of that puzzle as well. No, there is some cargo that is imported into our South Florida community for the cruise lines themselves. In fact, some of the freight forwarders have big, entire operations just to get their cargo on the cruise ships, because it's a little bit different from most cargo. If you miss the ship, you miss the ship. So it's a very delicate piece of work. So with that, I'm going to say I want to thank both Jonathan, all three, Jonathan Daniels, Lester Sola, and Juan Kuryla for their contribution today. As always, I want to thank our sponsor MIA for hosting us, as well as our supporting sponsors, the World Trade Center Miami, Port Everglades Association, and the FCBF. In addition, if you want to reach us, there's many ways to do so. You can reach us. Our website is ustradenumbers.com. You can email me at kroberts@ustradenumbers.com. Our phone number's there, and I got my shoulder on the social media, but there you can see it right there. So I want to thank everybody, and thank you for being here and having a great weekend. Thanks so much to all three of you. Fantastic.
Thank you.